I gave her $500,000. I believed every word she said. I thought I was building our future, but she was building his. I'd been in Cebu for 3 weeks when I met her. 3 weeks of sitting alone in hotel rooms, staring at the ocean, wondering what the hell I was doing with my life. Calgary felt like a tomb after Margaret died. 5 years and I still couldn't walk into our bedroom without seeing her there, folding laundry, humming those old songs she loved. So I ran. Booked a one-way ticket to the Philippines and told myself I was starting over. I was 71 years old and I didn't know how to be alone. The cafe was nothing special. Just plastic chairs and umbrellas on the beach. The kind of place tourists skip on their way to somewhere better. I ordered coffee and sat there watching the water, trying to feel something other than empty. That's when she walked over. "You look sad," she said. Not a question, just a fact. I looked up. She was smiling, holding a tray with my coffee. Mid-30s maybe, dark eyes, black hair pulled back in a ponytail. She wore the cafe uniform but somehow made it look elegant. "I'm not sad," I said. "Just thinking. About home?" She set the coffee down, didn't walk away. "Something like that." She pulled out the chair across from me. "I'm Melinda. I work here 5 days a week. I see a lot of foreigners come through. Most of them are running from something." I laughed. She wasn't wrong. Reginald. Reggie. And yeah, maybe I am. "What are you running from, Reggie?" Nobody had asked me that. Not my daughter, not my friends back home. They all just said things like, "You need time," or "Grief is a process." This woman I'd known for 30 seconds asked the one question that mattered. "My wife died 5 years ago," I said. 42 years we were married. I thought I'd be okay by now, but I'm not. Melinda's face softened. "I lost someone too. My husband. He left when our son was 2, just gone one day. No goodbye. I'm sorry." "Don't be. I learned to survive. But lonely is lonely, you know. Doesn't matter why." I did know. God. I knew exactly what she meant. We talked for 2 hours that first day. She told me about her son, about growing up in a village outside Cebu, about working 3 jobs to keep them fed. I told her about my career, about Margaret, about how Calgary winters felt colder every year. She laughed at my stories, asked questions, listened like what I said actually mattered. When the sun started to set, she stood up. "I should get back to work, but you should come back tomorrow, Reggie. If you want." "I want," I said, and I meant it. I came back the next day. And the day after that. By the end of the week, I was ordering coffee I didn't drink just to sit and talk to her. She'd take her breaks at my table, and we'd talk about everything and nothing. She told me about the small house she rented, about her son's dreams of becoming a doctor, about the broken air conditioner she couldn't afford to fix. "It's hard here," she said one afternoon. "Everything costs so much. And my family, they depend on me. My mother is sick. My sister's husband left her with 4 kids. I send what I can, but it's never enough." I wanted to help. I didn't know how else to show her I cared. "How much does an air conditioner cost?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, Reggie, I'm not asking you for anything. I know. I'm offering." "Why would you do that?" "Because I can. And because I want to." She looked at me for a long time. Then she smiled. That same smile from the first day, the one that made me feel like maybe I wasn't invisible after all. "You're a kind man," she said softly. "I forget men like you exist." That night I lay in bed thinking about her, about the way she said my name, about how, for the first time since Margaret died, I didn't feel like I was just waiting to die too. I told myself it was just friendship. But I was lying. I knew I was lying. Maybe this is what I came here for, I thought. Maybe she's the reason I got on that plane. The air conditioner cost $800. I sent her $1,000, just to be safe. She cried when I told her. "I can't accept this," she said, her voice breaking. It's too much. It's nothing, I said. Please, let me do this. She hugged me. First time she'd touched me. I could smell her shampoo, feel her breath against my chest. You're the kindest man I've ever met, Reggie. You don't have to thank me. Just let me help. 2 weeks later, she asked if I wanted to see her home. It was smaller than I expected. 1 bedroom, cracked walls, a roof that leaked when it rained. Her son was there, a quiet boy named Carlo, maybe 12 years old. He shook my hand solemnly. Mama talks about you, he said in careful English. Good things, I hope. She says you're her friend. She doesn't have many friends. We sat outside while Melinda cooked. She brought out plates of rice and chicken, apologizing that it wasn't enough. It was more than enough. Carlo told me about school, about wanting to study medicine. Smart kid, polite. I could see the worry in Melinda's eyes when he talked about university. After dinner, she walked me outside. His tuition is due next month, she said quietly. I don't know how I'm going to pay it. How much? $1,500. But Reggie, I'm not asking. I know you're not. But I'm offering. Let me help, Melinda. She started crying again. Why are you doing this? You barely know me. Because I'm lonely, I wanted to say. Because you make me feel like I matter. Because when I'm with you, I don't think about Margaret. But I couldn't say any of that. So I said, because you need help, and I have the money. That's reason enough. She kissed my cheek, soft and quick, but enough to make my heart race like I was 20 again. I'll pay you back someday. I promise. Don't worry about that. I sent the money the next morning. She called me crying again, saying thank you over and over. I felt like a hero, like I'd saved them. It felt good to be needed. It felt good to matter. The requests came slowly after that. Never direct. She'd mention a problem and I'd offer a solution. The roof leaked? I sent money for repairs. Her mother needed medicine? I covered it. Her sister's kids needed school supplies? Done. Every time, Melinda would cry and hug me and tell me I was changing their lives. I don't know what we'd do without you, she said one evening. We were sitting on the seawall watching the sunset. You've done so much for us, Reggie. It's nothing. It's everything. She took my hand. First time she'd done that. Her skin was soft and warm. I feel safe with you, like I can breathe again. I squeezed her hand. I'm glad I met you, Melinda. Me too. We sat there in silence, hands linked, watching the sun sink into the ocean. I told myself I was just helping a friend, just being generous. But my chest was tight and my pulse was racing and I knew the truth. I was falling in love with her. Maybe I already had. And I think she knew it. I think she'd known from the start. 2 months after we met, I'd given her almost $20,000. I didn't care. The money meant nothing to me. I had plenty. My pension was generous. I'd sold the house in Calgary, invested well over the years. What was $20,000 compared to the way she made me feel? Compared to the way she smiled when she saw me? Compared to the way she said my name? You're my savior, Reggie, she whispered one night. I don't know how I got so lucky. I kissed her forehead. Gentle, careful. I'm the lucky one. But somewhere deep down, below the happiness and the purpose and the feeling of being needed, there was a whisper, a small voice asking why she never argued when I offered money, why her emergencies always seemed to happen right after I'd sent the last payment, why I always felt more like a bank than a boyfriend. I ignored that voice. I had to, because if I listened to it, I'd have to admit what I already knew. I wasn't helping her out of kindness. I was buying her, and she was letting me. We'd been seeing each other for 3 months when everything changed. I took her to Bohol for the weekend. Rented a nice hotel, nothing crazy, just clean and comfortable with a view of the ocean. She'd never stayed in a hotel before. She walked around the room, touching everything like it was magic. This is beautiful, she said, looking out at the water. I can't believe I'm here. You deserve it, I said. You work so hard. You deserve good things." She turned and looked at me, and something in her eyes was different, softer, more open. "You make me feel special, Reggie, like I'm worth something." "You are worth something." We had dinner on the beach. The restaurant set up a table right on the sand, candles flickering in the breeze. Melinda wore a dress I'd bought her, simple and blue, and she looked beautiful. Not magazine beautiful, real beautiful, the kind that made me forget how old I was. "Tell me about your wife," she said over dessert. I hesitated. "Why?" "Because she was important to you, and I want to know you." So I told her about how Margaret and I met at a dance in 1979, about our wedding, our first apartment, the way she'd steal the blankets every night for 42 years, about her diagnosis, the treatments that didn't work, the morning I woke up and she was gone. "Do you still love her?" Melinda asked quietly. "I'll always love her, but she's gone, and I'm still here." Melinda reached across the table and took my hand. "I understand. My husband, he wasn't good to me, but I loved him anyway. When he left, I thought I'd die, but I didn't. I survived." "We survived, Reggie, and maybe we get to start again." We walked back along the beach after dinner. The moon was full, the water black and silver. Melinda stopped and turned to me. "Thank you," she said, "for this weekend, for everything. You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do, because you didn't have to do any of this. You chose to. You chose me." She kissed me then, not on the cheek this time, on the mouth. Soft and hesitant at first, then deeper. My whole body went electric. I hadn't kissed anyone but Margaret in 42 years. I'd forgotten what it felt like. The surprise of it, the fear and the thrill all mixed up together. "Is this okay?" she whispered against my lips. "Yes," I managed. "It's more than okay." We went back to the hotel. She stayed with me that night. Like I wasn't just some old man waiting to die alone in a foreign country. She held me afterward, her head on my chest, and whispered, "Mahal kita." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means, I love you." My heart stopped. "You love me?" "I think I do." "Is that crazy?" "No. God, no. I think I love you too." She lifted her head and looked at me, her eyes shining. "Really? Really?" She kissed me again, slower this time, and I felt something crack open inside me. All the loneliness, all the grief, all the years of feeling invisible just poured out. I held her and I cried. Actually cried. She didn't pull away. She just held me tighter. "It's okay," she murmured. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" I sounded like a child. I didn't care. "I promise, Mahal. I promise." We stayed up until sunrise talking. She told me things she'd never told anyone, about her husband hitting her, about nights when she didn't have food for Carlo, about feeling worthless, used up, invisible. I told her about the depression after Margaret died, about the weeks I didn't leave the house, about standing on the bridge one night, looking down at the water, wondering if anyone would care if I just let go. "I would have cared," she said fiercely. "If I'd known you then, I would have cared. You care now. That's what matters." She curled up against me. "You make me feel safe, Reggie. Like I can be myself. Do you know how rare that is?" I did know, because she made me feel the same way. Like I didn't have to be strong or put together or okay. Like I could just be broken. And that was enough. "I'll take care of you," I whispered into her hair. "I promise. As long as you want me, I'll take care of you." "Forever?" she asked softly. "Forever." Maybe I should have known then. Maybe some part of me did know, but I didn't care. For the first time in 5 years, I felt like I had a future, like there was something to wake up for, like maybe this was my second chance. And I was going to hold on to it with everything I had. Things were good for a while. Great, even. Melinda and I fell into a rhythm. I'd pick her up after work, we'd have dinner, walk on the beach, talk until late. Some nights she'd stay with me, others she'd go home to Carlo. I understood. She was a mother first. I respected that. But small things started to shift. Little things I noticed but didn't want to see. Her phone was always face down. Always. And if it buzzed, she'd grab it fast, glance at the screen, and put it back without reading the message. "Who's that?" I asked once. "Just my sister, always needing something." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She started disappearing for hours without explanation. I'd call and it would go straight to voicemail. She'd text back later saying her phone died, or she was with her mother, or she had errands to run. Always a reason. Always believable. "I missed you today," I'd say when she finally showed up. "I'm sorry, Mahal. It's been crazy. My family, they need so much from me." I wanted to believe her. God, I needed to believe her. Then there was the money. It never stopped. Every week there was a new crisis. Her mother needed surgery. Her sister's rent was late. Carlo needed a new uniform. The house needed a new water heater. The car broke down. On and on and on. "I hate asking you," she'd say, tears in her eyes, "but I don't know where else to turn. It's okay. That's what I'm here for." I sent 5,000 one week, 3,000 the next, 7,000 for her mother's surgery. Every time she'd cry and hug me and tell me I was saving them. Every time I'd feel that surge of purpose, of being needed, of mattering. But the knot in my stomach grew tighter. One afternoon I went to surprise her at the cafe. She wasn't there. Her coworker, a young girl named Rose, looked confused. "Melinda, she called in sick today." "Sick?" "She told me she was working." Rose shrugged. "Maybe she mixed up her days. She's been calling in a lot lately." I called Melinda. No answer. I drove to her house. She wasn't there either. I sat in my car for an hour, feeling stupid and paranoid and angry all at once. Where was she? Why would she lie about working? She called me that evening. "Hey, Mahal. Sorry, my phone died. How was your day?" "I went to the cafe," Rose said. "You called in sick." Silence. Then, "Oh, yeah, I wasn't feeling well this morning, but I'm better now. I was going to tell you. Where were you all day?" "Home. Resting." "Why?" "I went to your house. You weren't there." Another pause. Longer this time. "I was at my mother's. She needed help with something. Reggie, why are you checking up on me?" "I'm not checking up on you." I was worried. "It sounds like you don't trust me." "I do trust you. I just what? You think I'm lying? After everything we've been through?" I backed down. I always back down. "I'm sorry, I'm just being paranoid." "It's okay, Mahal, but you have to trust me. We can't work if you don't trust me." "I know. I do. I'm sorry." She came over that night and we made up. But something felt off, like a hairline crack in glass, barely visible. But there. A week later, I saw the message. Her phone was on my kitchen counter, face down like always. It lit up with a notification. I glanced at it without thinking. Just a reflex. And I saw the name, Jay. And below it, 3 words that made my blood go cold. "Miss you, baby." I picked up the phone. My hands were shaking. I shouldn't look. I knew I shouldn't. But I did. Melinda came out of the bathroom. "Hey, what do you want for?" She stopped, saw me holding her phone. Her face went white. "Who's Jay?" My voice sounded strange, distant. "Give me my phone, Reggie." "Who is he?" "He's my cousin." "Give it back." "Your cousin calls you baby?" "It's a Filipino thing. We're close. Please give me my phone." I handed it to her. I didn't know what else to do. She clutched it to her chest and stared at me. "You don't trust me," she said quietly. "I want to, but you don't. You think I'm lying. You think I'm using you. Are you?" She looked like I'd slapped her. "How can you ask me that? After everything? After I told you I love you? Then who is Jay?" "Really?" "I told you. My cousin. He's going through a hard time and I've been helping him." that's all. Can I meet him? What? If he's your cousin, I'd like to meet him. Her eyes flickered, just for a second, but I saw it. He lives in Manila. Maybe next time you're there. Okay. She left early that night, said she had a headache. I sat alone in my condo and stared at the wall. My mind was racing, replaying every conversation, every unexplained absence, every tearful request for money. I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being played, that I'd been played from the start. 2 days later, she asked for $10,000, said she wanted to invest in a small business. A friend was opening a store and needed a partner. It would give her income, make her independent, take the pressure off me. It's a lot of money, I said carefully. I know, but it's an investment, Reggie. In us. In our future. I sent the money. What else was I going to do? Say no and watch her leave? Admit that I didn't trust her and lose the only person who made me feel alive? She kissed me when I told her. You're my savior, she whispered. My angel. But I didn't feel like a savior. I felt like a fool. And that knot in my stomach? It wasn't a knot anymore. It was a stone, cold and heavy and growing every day. I asked her to marry me on a Tuesday. No grand gesture, no plan. We were at my place, eating takeout, and it just came out. Marry me. She stopped mid-bite. What? Marry me, Melinda. Let's make this official. She put down her fork, stared at me. Are you serious? Yes. I love you. You love me. Let's get married. Reggie? I don't know what to say. Say yes. She was quiet for a long time. Too long. My chest started to hurt. Then, finally, okay, yes, I'll marry you. I should have felt joy, excitement, relief, but all I felt was a strange, hollow satisfaction, like I'd won something I wasn't sure I wanted. We planned a small ceremony, just her family and a few friends. I didn't invite anyone from Canada. My daughter didn't even know Melinda existed yet. I told myself I'd tell her after the wedding, that it would be easier to explain once it was done. The morning of the wedding, I woke up with a weight on my chest. I kept thinking, this should feel different. Shouldn't it feel different? When I married Margaret, I couldn't wait. I was so excited I barely slept the night before, but now I just felt numb, resigned. Melinda looked beautiful. She wore a simple white dress, flowers in her hair. She smiled at me, but her eyes were somewhere else, distant, like she was going through the motions. The ceremony was in a small chapel in Cebu. Her mother was there, her sister, her aunts and uncles. They all smiled at me, thanked me, shook my hand. One of her uncles pulled me aside. You're a good man, he said in broken English. You take care of our Melinda. She's a good girl. You're lucky. I nodded. I know, but I didn't feel lucky. I felt like I'd just signed a contract I couldn't read. We had lunch at a restaurant after. Her family ate and laughed and toasted to our health. I paid for everything. Of course I did. Nobody even pretended to offer. Melinda sat beside me, quiet. I reached for her hand under the table. You okay? I asked. Yeah. Just tired. Are you happy? She looked at me then, really looked at me. I'm grateful, Reggie. You've given me so much, more than I ever thought I'd have. Grateful. Not happy. Grateful. That night, we went back to my condo. Our condo now, I guess. Our wedding night. She changed out of her dress and sat on the edge of the bed. I sat beside her. This is weird, isn't it? I said. She laughed softly. A little. Are you sure about this? About us? Why are you asking me that now? We're already married. I know, but I need to hear you say it. That you want this. That you want me. She turned to face me. I want this, Reggie. I want us. But her voice was flat, rehearsed, like she'd practiced the words in her head before saying them. I kissed her anyway, tried to make it romantic, meaningful. She kissed me back, but it felt mechanical, like she was somewhere else. Afterward, she fell asleep quickly. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe. This should feel different, I thought. I just married a woman I love. I should be happy. Shouldn't I be happy? But all I felt was tired and alone, even with her right there beside me. The next morning, she was on her phone, always on her phone. I watched her from the doorway. She was smiling at the screen, actually smiling, more than she'd smiled at me all day yesterday. "Who are you texting?" I asked. She jumped, locked the screen. "Nobody. Just checking messages. You look happy." "I'm always happy, Mahal." But she wasn't. Not with me. She was polite, grateful, but not happy, and I was starting to realize that maybe she never had been. Her family started calling more after the wedding. Her mother needed money for medicine. Her sister's kids needed food. Her cousin needed help with rent. It was like marrying her opened some floodgate, like I'd become responsible for all of them. "Can you help?" Melinda would ask. "They're my family. I can't say no." I couldn't say no either. What kind of husband would I be if I refused to help my wife's family? So I sent money. Again and again and again, thousands every week, tens of thousands every month. "When does it stop?" I asked one night. When does what stop? The requests, the emergencies, the constant need for money. She looked hurt. "They're poor, Reggie. They're struggling. You have so much. Can't you share a little?" "I've shared a lot, and I'm grateful. We all are. But you make it sound like a burden." "It's not a burden. It's just, I thought once we were married, things would be different." "Different how?" I didn't know how to answer that. Different like she'd be happy. Different like she'd want to be with me. Not just need my money. Different like I'd feel like a husband instead of an ATM. "Never mind," I said. "Forget it." She went back to her phone. I went back to feeling invisible, and the stone in my stomach grew heavier. I wasn't snooping. I need you to believe that. I wasn't the kind of man who went through his wife's phone. But that night, I didn't have a choice. We'd been married for 2 months. 2 months of her being distant, distracted, always on her phone. 2 months of me pretending everything was fine while that stone in my stomach turned into a boulder. I was lying in bed, and she was in the shower. Her phone was on the nightstand. It buzzed. I glanced over, just a reflex, and I saw the notification. "Jay, can't wait to see you tomorrow, baby. I miss your smile." My heart stopped. Jay. That name again. Her cousin. The one who lived in Manila and called her baby. I picked up the phone. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it. I shouldn't look. I knew I shouldn't. But I had to. I had to know. I swiped up. Her passcode was my birthday. She'd made such a sweet thing about it when she set it up. "So I never forget how important you are to me," she'd said. I typed it in. The phone unlocked. I went to her messages. Found Jay. Opened the thread. And my world ended. There were photos. Dozens of them. Her and a man. Young, maybe 30. His arm around her waist. Her head on his shoulder. Kissing. Smiling. Looking at each other the way she'd never looked at me. They looked happy. God, they looked so happy. I scrolled up. The messages went back months. Before we were married. Before we even met. "I miss you. When can I see you? I love you, Mahal. Soon, baby. Soon. He doesn't know. He never will." There was more. Videos. Voice messages. I clicked on one. Her voice, soft and intimate. "I'll see you next week, my love." I told him I'm visiting my mother. He believes everything I say. He's so lonely, Jay. So desperate. It's almost sad. I dropped the phone. Actually dropped it. It hit the floor and the screen cracked. I didn't care. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The room was spinning. I heard the shower turn off. Heard her humming. She was humming. Like everything was normal. Like she hadn't just destroyed me. She walked out, wrapped in a towel, saw me sitting on the edge of the bed, saw her phone on the floor. Her face went pale. Reggie. Who is he? She didn't move. Didn't speak. Who is Jay? I can explain. I stood up. My legs were shaking, but I managed. Then explain. Explain the photos. Explain the messages. Explain why you're telling him you love him while you're married to me. It's not what you think. What I think. Melinda, I saw the messages. I heard your voice. You called me desperate. You said I believe everything you say. She started crying. Reggie, please. Is he your cousin? Or were you lying about that too? He's a friend. An old friend. An old friend you're sleeping with. She flinched. It's complicated. Complicated? We're married. There's nothing complicated about that. I do care about you, Reggie. I do. But you love him. She didn't answer. That was answer enough. I picked up her phone and held it out to her. How long? What? How long have you been with him? Since before we met? She took the phone, clutched it to her chest. Yes, since before. And you never broke up with him. I tried. I did. But it's complicated. Stop saying it's complicated. You're in love with someone else. You married me anyway. What's complicated about that? I couldn't. She was sobbing now, full on sobbing. You don't understand. I have a son. I have a family. They depend on me. Jay, he's broke. He can't help. But you were so kind, so generous. I thought I could make it work. I thought I could love you both. I felt sick, actually sick. You married me for my money. No, not just that. I do care about you, but you love him. Yes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But yes. I sat back down. My legs gave out. I couldn't stand anymore. Get out, Reggie. Get out of my house. Get out of my sight. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. Go to him. Go to Jay. Go anywhere. Just get away from me. She stood there crying, still in her towel, looking small and pathetic. Part of me wanted to comfort her. 42 years with Margaret taught me to comfort crying women, but I couldn't. I couldn't move. I couldn't feel anything but this crushing, suffocating weight on my chest. Can we talk about this tomorrow? She asked quietly. When you've calmed down? There's nothing to talk about. You lied to me. You used me. You married me while you were in love with someone else. I never meant to hurt you, but you did. You destroyed me, Melinda. She got dressed, packed a bag. I watched her move around the room like a ghost. When she got to the door, she turned back. I did care about you, Reggie. I still do. You have to believe that. I don't have to believe anything you say. Not anymore. She left. I heard the door close, heard her footsteps in the hallway. Then silence. I sat there on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing, and I realized I was alone. Truly alone. Not lonely alone like after Margaret died. Alone. The kind of alone that comes from being betrayed, from realizing the person you loved never existed, that she was just a role someone played, and I'd paid $500,000 to watch the performance. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there in the dark, asking myself the same question over and over. Who have I been sleeping next to? Who was she? Because the woman I loved, the woman I married, she wasn't real. She never had been. I spent the next week doing something I should have done months ago. I went through my bank statements. All of them. Every transfer, every wire, every cash withdrawal. I made a spreadsheet. I'm an engineer. It's what I do. I needed to see it all laid out. Needed to understand exactly how deep I dug this hole. The air conditioner. $1,000. Carlo's tuition. $1,500. The roof repairs. $3,000. Her mother's surgery. $7,000. The business investment. $10,000. Her sister's rent, $2,000. The car repairs, $4,000. Emergency dental work, $3,000. Hospital bills, $6,000. On and on and on. Every request, every tearful phone call, every promise that this was the last time, she'd never ask again. The total came to $508,000, $500,000 in 8 months. I stared at the number until it stopped meaning anything. It was just digits on a screen, not real money, not my retirement, not the future I'd planned, just numbers. I called my daughter, Sarah. She lived in Toronto with her husband and 2 kids. I hadn't told her about Melinda yet. Hadn't told her I'd remarried. Hadn't told her I'd moved half my savings to a woman I barely knew. This was going to be the hardest call of my life. Dad? Hi. I was just thinking about you. Hey, sweetheart. You sound weird. Are you okay? I need to tell you something. Silence. Then, okay. I'm listening. I told her everything. About meeting Melinda, about the money, about the marriage, about the photos and the messages and the boyfriend she'd had the whole time. Sarah didn't interrupt. She just listened. When I finished, there was a long, terrible silence. Sarah, I'm here. Her voice was shaking. I'm trying to process this. I know it's a lot. Dad, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell anyone? I don't know. I was embarrassed, I guess. Or maybe I knew if I said it out loud, I'd have to admit how stupid I was being. You weren't stupid. You were lonely. I gave her $500,000, Sarah. I know. I heard you. That was your inheritance. That was supposed to be for you and the kids. She started crying. Actually crying. I don't care about the money, Dad. I care about you. You were taken advantage of. You were manipulated. I let myself be manipulated. Because you were grieving. Because you were vulnerable. That doesn't make it your fault, doesn't it? No. It makes you human. It makes you someone who wanted to be loved. There's nothing wrong with that. I broke down then. Just completely fell apart. I sat on the floor of my condo with the phone pressed to my ear and cried like I hadn't cried since Margaret's funeral. Sarah cried with me. We stayed on the line for an hour, neither of us saying much. Come home, Dad, she said finally. Come back to Canada. We'll figure this out. I don't know if I can. Why not? Because I have to face it, Sarah. What I did. What I let happen. I can't just run away. You're not running away. You're coming home. I'll think about it. Promise me you'll think about it. I promise. After we hung up, I sat there looking at the spreadsheet. $508,000. I could have bought a house, could have traveled the world, could have secured Sarah's kids' college funds. Instead, I gave it to a woman who called me desperate behind my back, who laughed about how easy I was to fool. I wasn't naive. I knew what people would say. Old fool falls for pretty young woman, loses his money, learns his lesson, a cautionary tale, a joke at dinner parties. But it wasn't funny to me. It was my life, my heart, my last chance at happiness, and she'd taken all of it. The worst part? I didn't hate her. I wanted to. God, I wanted to hate her so much it hurt, but I couldn't. And loving her meant admitting I'd been willing to pay any price just to feel less alone. And that truth was harder to face than the betrayal. I made a decision that night. I was going to see her one more time. Not to yell, not to beg, just to hear the truth. The real truth, not the version she'd tell herself to feel less guilty. I deserved that much. And then I was going to walk away, leave the Philippines, go back to Canada, and figure out how to live with myself. I wasn't naive. I was desperate. And desperation costs more than money. It costs your dignity, your self-respect, your ability to look yourself in the mirror without flinching. That's what I gave her. That's what I'll never get back. I asked her to meet me at the same cafe where we'd first met. It felt right somehow. Closing the circle. she agreed. I got there early and sat at the same table by the water. The same plastic chairs. The same view. Everything the same except me. I wasn't the same man who'd sat here 8 months ago. She arrived 20 minutes late. She always was. I used to find it charming. Now it just felt disrespectful. She sat down across from me and put her sunglasses on top of her head. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying, or maybe she just wanted me to think she had. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi. I wasn't sure you'd really want to see me. I need answers." "Okay." The waitress came over. Young girl. New. She smiled and asked what we wanted. I ordered coffee. Melinda ordered nothing. The waitress left. Melinda folded her hands on the table and looked at me. "I'm sorry," she said, "for everything. I never wanted it to end like this." "How did you want it to end?" She flinched. "I didn't think about it ending. I was trying to survive. By lying to me. By stealing from me. I never stole from you. You gave me that money. Because you manipulated me into giving it to you. I told you the truth about my situation. About my family. About needing help. But you lied about loving me." She looked down. "I cared about you, Reggie. I still do. But you didn't love me." "No, I didn't. Not the way you wanted me to. It should have hurt more." Hearing her admit it. But I felt numb. "Were you ever going to leave Jay?" "I don't know. Maybe. He and I. It's complicated." "Stop saying it's complicated. You were with both of us. You married me while you were sleeping with him. There's nothing complicated about that. It's called cheating." She started crying. "You don't understand. I had no choice. My family was drowning. Carlo needed so much. Jay, he couldn't help. He's a good man, but he's broke. You were successful, generous, lonely. You wanted to help. I let you. You used me. I survived. That's what women like me do. We survive." I took a sip of my coffee. It tasted like ash. "Did you ever feel anything for me? Anything real?" She wiped her eyes. "Yes, I did. You were kind to me. You treated me well. You made me feel safe. That wasn't fake. But you didn't love me. I wanted to. I tried. But love doesn't work that way, does it? You can't force yourself to feel something. No, you can't." We sat in silence. The ocean was calm, beautiful. A couple walked by holding hands, laughing. I watched them and felt 1,000,000 years old. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now? I go home. Back to Canada. And you go back to Jay. What about us?" "There is no us. There never was. What about the marriage?" "I'll file for annulment. Or divorce. Whatever. I don't care." "And the money?" I laughed. Couldn't help it. "The money's gone. You spent it. I'm not asking for it back." She looked surprised. "You're not? What's the point? You don't have it. And I can't afford the lawyers. I just want to be done." "I'm sorry," she said again. "I really am. You were good to me, Reggie, but not good enough." She didn't deny it. We sat there for another few minutes, neither of us knowing what to say. Finally, I stood up, pulled out my wallet, left cash on the table for the coffee. "Goodbye, Melinda." "Reggie, wait. Don't. Please, just let me go." I walked away, down the beach, past the vendors, past the tourists taking selfies. I didn't look back. I knew if I did, I'd see her sitting there, and some stupid part of me would want to go back, to forgive her, to pretend we could start over, but we couldn't. There was no starting over from this. I flew back to Calgary 2 days later, packed my things, closed the condo, said goodbye to the Philippines. The flight was long and cold, and I spent most of it staring out the window at nothing. When we landed, Sarah was waiting at arrivals. She hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe. "I'm so glad you're home," she whispered. "Me too." She drove me to her house. I'd stay with them for a while, figure things out, maybe forever. I didn't know. Her kids ran up and hugged me. "Grandpa!" They were so excited, so innocent. They didn't know their grandfather was a broken man who'd given away their future to a woman who never loved him. That night, lying in Sarah's guest room, I thought about Melinda and Jay. I wondered if they were together now, if he knew what she'd done, if he cared. I wondered if she felt guilty or relieved or nothing at all. And then I realized it didn't matter. She was gone. The money was gone. The dream was gone. All that was left was me, and I had to figure out how to be okay with that. I don't hate her. I hate who I became trying to keep her. That's the truth I couldn't admit for months. I didn't lose $500,000 to a con artist. I spent $500,000 trying to buy love, trying to prove I was worth loving, trying to outrun the loneliness that had been eating me alive since Margaret died, and none of it worked. Because you can't buy love. You can't buy companionship. You can only rent it, and the bill always comes due. I've been back in Calgary for 6 months now. Sarah checks on me every day, sometimes twice. She brings the kids over on weekends. We play board games, watch movies, talk about school, normal things, good things. I've started therapy, once a week, every Tuesday. I sit in a small office with a woman named Dr. Chen, and I talk about Melinda, about Margaret, about loneliness and grief and shame. You didn't do anything wrong, Dr. Chen says every session. You wanted connection. That's human. I gave her $500,000 because you were hurting, because you were vulnerable. That doesn't make you stupid. It makes you someone who was exploited. I'm trying to believe her. Some days I do. Most days I don't. I don't talk about Melinda much anymore. Not because it doesn't hurt. It does, but because I finally understand what happened. I wasn't in love. I was in need. And she saw that. She saw a lonely old man with money and a broken heart, and she took advantage. I don't blame her for that. Not anymore. She was surviving, doing what she had to do for her family, for herself. I can't fault her for that. But I do blame myself for being so desperate that I ignored every red flag, for needing to be needed so badly that I paid any price, for convincing myself that money could fill the hole Margaret left. It couldn't. It can't. Nothing can. I just have to learn to live with the hole. Sarah asked me the other day if I regret going to the Philippines. I don't know, I said. Yes, no, maybe. That's not an answer, Dad. I know, but it's all I've got. The truth is, I don't regret meeting Melinda. I regret what I became trying to keep her. I regret losing myself in the fantasy that I could be loved again, that I could matter again, that I wasn't just an old man waiting to die. She didn't make me feel those things. I already felt them. She just promised to make them go away. And I believed her. And I paid for it. I'm 71 years old. I don't have time to rebuild what I lost. My retirement is gone. My savings are decimated. My daughter's inheritance is gone. I can't fix that. I can't undo it. But I can stop pretending I wasn't lonely enough to let it happen. I can stop pretending I didn't know what I was doing, because I did know. Deep down, below all the hope and the denial and the desperation, I knew. I just didn't want to admit it. There are nights when I lie awake and think about her, about whether she thinks about me, about whether she feels guilty, about whether Jay knows the whole story. I wonder if she loved him the way I wanted her to love me. I hope she did. I hope someone got something real out of all this. But mostly I think about the man I was before I met her. The man who loved his wife for 42 years, who raised a daughter, who had a career and a life and a purpose. That man wouldn't have done what I did. That man wouldn't have been so desperate for connection that he'd pay a stranger to pretend to care about him. And I mourn that man, because I don't think I'll ever be him again. Last week, my grandson asked me why I look sad. He's 6, doesn't understand complex emotions yet. I told him I was just tired. He climbed into my lap and hugged me. I love you, Grandpa. He said, "I love you too, buddy." And I meant it. That love is real, uncomplicated, free. The kind of love I should have been chasing all along. Not romantic love, not the kind that makes you feel young again. Just the quiet, steady love of family, of people who know you and love you anyway. That's enough. It has to be enough, because it's all I have left. I survived her. That's what Dr. Chen keeps telling me. I survived the betrayal. I survived the heartbreak. I survived the shame. Now I have to survive myself, survive the loneliness, survive the regret, survive the knowledge that I wasted 8 months and $500,000 on a fantasy. Some days I think I can, other days I'm not so sure. But I keep going. I wake up. I have coffee with Sarah. I play with my grandkids. I go to therapy. I sit with the weight of what I did, and I don't run from it. Because running is what got me here. Running from grief. Running from loneliness. Running from the empty house and the silent rooms and the ghost of a woman I loved for 42 years. I'm done running. I'm just going to sit here and feel it. All of it. The pain, the shame, the regret, the loneliness. Because maybe that's what healing is. Not moving on. Not forgetting. Just learning to sit with the hurt until it becomes part of you, until it's just another scar you carry. And maybe, someday, I'll be able to look at that scar and not flinch. Maybe I'll be able to tell the story without breaking down. Maybe I'll be able to forgive myself. But not today. Today I'm still broken, still hurting, still angry at myself for being so stupid, so desperate, so lonely that I believed every word she said. And maybe that's okay. Maybe I'm allowed to be broken. Maybe that's part of surviving. I'm 71 years old. I gave a woman I barely knew $500,000 because I needed to feel loved. And she took it, and I let her. And now I have to live with that. Every day. For the rest of my life. That's my truth. That's my story. And I'm finally ready to own it.